Welcome to the deep dive. Our sources today are presenting let's say a highly provocative comparison.
That's one way to put it. Definitely provocative.
We're diving deep into Orwell's 1984, yeah, and drawing parallels between its themes and specific actions, political rhetoric tied to the Trump administration.
And importantly, this isn't just about, loose literary analogies. The sources we're looking at are intensely focused on policy, actual enforcement claims.
Right. So the mission for this deep dive is really to objectively unpack these claims of, quote, Orwellian control.
Mhm. And specifically, looking at how modern strategies are alleged to mirror themes like propaganda, reality manipulation.
And crucially, right, the use of the state apparatus to control thought.
Exactly. With very specific attention paid to this policy directive known as NSPM 7.
Okay, so that's our challenge then, translating this, totalitarian fiction into claims about contemporary policy.
And we need to ground it in those core Orwellian concepts first, I think. Newspeak.
Right, the simplified language meant to restrict thought.
Doublethink holding contradictory ideas. Propaganda, obviously.
Yeah.
And central to what we're discussing. Thought crime.
Thought crime. In the book, that's the ultimate sin, isn't it? A thought, just a thought, that Bigger Brother doesn't approve of.
Precisely. And it's enforced by the thought police, the think pole. Their job is to stamp out dissent before it even gets voiced.
And the sources we have jump right in with a pretty stark comparison there.
They do. They allege a kind of weaponization of federal agencies, specifically naming the FBI.
Under Kash Patel, they say.
Right, purportedly under Patel, and the Department of Justice allegedly under Pam Bondi, with the aim of targeting political critics.
That's a serious claim, institutionalizing the targeting of critics.
Very serious. And it seems to crystallize, according to these sources, around this specific policy, National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, NSPM 7.
Okay, so before we get into the critique, what's the official purpose of NSPM 7, just for context?
Well, formally, it's a directive focused on counterterrorism, national security. Standard stuff on the surface.
But the sources see it differently. You mentioned Ken Klippenstein's view.
Yes. His analysis, as presented in the sources, frames it essentially as a declaration of war on anyone who does not support the Trump administration and its agenda. Pretty strong words.
Wow. So the argument isn't that counterterror policy is bad, but that this policy is being sort of twisted, redirected.
That's exactly the claim, that it allegedly retools the counterterror apparatus to go after Americans at home, using tools meant for foreign threats.
Against domestic political speech or activity, how do they argue it achieves that?
Well, the justification cited within the policy, according to the sources, is key. It apparently states that political violence stems from organized campaigns,
Okay.
which it says often start with the political opposition, specifically naming the left, dehumanizing targets.
Dehumanizing targets where?
In various places, anonymous chat for ads, in-person meetings, social media, and even educational institutions. That's the quote given.
So, wait. The source material is arguing that by defining certain speech and thought as the root cause of potential violence, the administration is effectively labeling political opposition itself as a counterterrorism issue.
That's precisely the interpretation presented in the sources. It shifts the focus from violent acts to the alleged pre-violent thoughts or expressions. Dissent becomes a national security risk.
Which leads us straight back to Orwell, doesn't it? Big Brother defining the thought crimes that trigger the think pole.
Exactly. And the sources provide this, frankly, astonishing list of views that NSPM 7 allegedly targets. It's like defining the unapproved thoughts.
Okay, let's hear it. What specific topics do the sources claim are under this umbrella?
Well, the list they provide is pretty wide-ranging. It allegedly targets expressions of anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, or anti-Christianity.
Standard targets for some political viewpoints, maybe.
Sure, and less controversially, perhaps, support for the overthrow of the U.S. government is also included.
Makes sense for a security memo, but you said it was wider. It goes beyond just outright revolution talk.
Oh, absolutely. It apparently delves right into cultural issues. The list explicitly singles out extremism on migration, race, and gender.
Extremism on those issues. That sounds potentially very broad.
It does. And maybe broadest of all, it targets hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality.
Hostility towards traditional views. Wow. The sources argue that this breadth creates a huge net, right? Bringing loads of political and cultural debate under potential surveillance.
That's the core of the argument. It acts as a dragnet definition for unapproved thinking.
So if the Think poll in 1984 used informers, telescreens, microphones, what modern tools are allegedly being used here, according to the sources?
The sources point to highly advanced surveillance. They highlight claims about icy immigration and customs enforcement,
What about ACE?
that the agency just bought new tools to monitor hundreds of millions of smartphones. That's a direct claim from the sources.
Hundreds of millions. That's vast.
It is. And experts quoted view this capability as inherently dangerous if applied to domestic monitoring of citizen speech and politics, irrespective of their immigration status.
Okay, so we have the alleged list of forbidden thoughts and the tech to potentially track them. But control isn't just observation, is it? Orwell's thought police use deception, agents provocateur.
False flags, entrapment.
Yeah.
To root out independent thinkers.
Do the sources draw parallels there too, with deceptive tactics?
They do, very clearly. They cite the ACLU, for instance, challenging reports of ICE agents allegedly impersonating local police.
They're impersonating police, why?
To gain warrantless entry into homes, apparently, or to lure people outside. The ACLU argues this is a clear Fourth Amendment violation protection against unreasonable searches.
That kind of tactic, impersonating police, must create a really chilling effect, undermining trust.
Exactly. It makes people afraid to interact even with legitimate local authorities, potentially hesitant to exercise any rights. And the sources mention specific stories, too. One protester's account is cited, talking about alleged FBI attempts to undermine Americans' freedom of speech and political expression.
How?
The implication is tactics designed to sow fear, create self-censorship, making people police their own thoughts, which is basically Orwell's Crime Stop, isn't it? That internalized self-censorship.
Right. Stopping the dangerous thought before it even fully forms. Okay, so that covers the pursuit. But what about after someone is caught? The Ministry of Love in the book. That was about breaking people, wasn't it? Degradation, torture.
Absolute destruction of the individual until they genuinely loved Big Brother. It's horrifying.
What parallel did the sources possibly draw for that?
This is where it gets particularly grim. The sources connect this to the treatment of migrants. Specifically, the claim is that ICE sent hundreds of migrants to El Salvador's CECOT mega prison.
CECOT, I've heard of that place. It's highly controversial, right?
Extremely. Advocates cited report severe human rights violations, claims of abuse, torture, lack of medical care. The sources reference NPR reporting that, contextually, at least 261 people died in El Salvador's prisons during their recent gang crackdown. It points to extreme conditions.
So the parallel drawn is the use of extreme degradation and potentially life-threatening conditions as a means of control or punishment, echoing the Ministry of Love's function.
That seems to be the analogy the sources are making, yes. The destruction of personhood through brutal means to enforce submission.
Which brings us to the final, perhaps ultimate, form of control discussed in 1984, controlling reality itself.
That starts with language, right? Newspeak.
The language engineered to make dissent literally unthinkable.
By stripping out the words needed for it, making Crime Stop almost automatic.
So if the state controls language, it controls thought. How do the sources claim this kind of reality control is happening now, particularly regarding the press?
Well, they point to alleged new restrictions from the Pentagon on journalists covering the Department of Defense.
What kind of restrictions?
According to outlets like Time, cited in the sources, journalists now have to sign a pledge.
A pledge? About what?
Not to report unauthorized information. And here's the kicker. Even if the information is unclassified.
Wait, unclassified but unauthorized? So stuff that isn't secret, but the Pentagon hasn't given the green light to report?
Exactly. And if they don't comply, they risk losing their press credentials.
That sounds like a direct way for the state to manage the narrative, doesn't it? Controlling what even non-secret information gets out.
It certainly seems like a mechanism for narrative control. And controlling the present narrative often involves controlling the past one, too.
Ah, the Ministry of Truth, Minitru, destroying records, creating unpersons who must be forgotten entirely.
And the sources allege that the Trump administration intensified efforts to, well, rewrite history, ordering federal agencies to remove exhibits or materials focusing on slavery and racial injustice.
So a direct federal mandate to change historical displays.
That's the claim. An alleged institutional campaign of historical erasure.
And who's critiquing this specifically? The sources name someone.
Yes, they quote Carsonia K. Whitehead. She's the president of ASLH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History.
What does she say about it?
She describes these steps, according to the sources, as veiled attempts to rewrite and distort the narrative. And she adds that they actively seek to erase the lived experiences of Black people.
Erasing lived experiences, that connects directly back to the unperson concept, doesn't it?
The parallel drawn by the sources is quite direct. By removing or altering records institutionally, the argument goes, you're essentially trying to make certain histories, certain people's experiences, forgotten, creating unpersons to fit a desired political orthodoxy.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. We started with Orwell's ideas, thought crime, and the sources led us down a path detailing very specific alleged policy actions.
Right. From NSPM 7 supposedly defining forbidden subjects,
To advanced surveillance tools monitoring smartphones.
to deceptive enforcement tactics like impersonating police.
Claims of severe degradation in places like CECOT mirroring the Ministry of Love.
And finally, active efforts to control the press and rewrite historical narratives, echoing Newspeak and Minutru. It's quite a list of alleged parallels.
So the core argument running through all these source claims seems to be about the institutionalization of these methods, not just random acts, but policy and practice aimed at suppressing certain thoughts and expressions.
That's the thread, yes. The sources consistently argue that the fundamental threat Orwell warned us about, the erosion or even destruction of democracy through these kinds of authoritarian control mechanisms, is being actively pursued.
Through attacks on the press, using alternative facts, shifting history.
And ultimately, policing citizens' thoughts and speech, not just their actions.
It's a heavy set of claims demanding real scrutiny. And it leaves us with a final thought, perhaps. If Orwell taught us that the goal of things like Newspeak and Minutru is to force Crime Stop, that inability to think independently, that automatic forgetting of inconvenient truths or people, then we need to ask ourselves, maybe looking beyond just overt politics, what other mechanisms, perhaps more subtle ones in our daily lives, might be encouraging us today to, well, to forget, or to just not question the lived experiences of others? How might we be nudged towards a kind of intellectual conformity, even without a ministry of truth telling us to?
That's a critical question, especially now. We definitely encourage you, the listener, to look into the source material yourself and keep thinking critically about these issues.